Today we dive into a remarkable tale from the Bible that beautifully illustrates the power of love. Once upon a time, in the land of Moab, there lived a woman named Ruth. She was married to a man from Bethlehem who sadly passed away, leaving her with her mother-in-law, Naomi. Now, Naomi was a woman who had also lost much, her husband and both her sons. In her grief, Naomi decided to return to Bethlehem, her homeland, and told Ruth to go back to her own family. But Ruth chose to stay with Naomi. She said, "Where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God." This was an extraordinary act of love and loyalty from Ruth. She could have chosen an easier path, but she decided to stick with Naomi through thick and thin, despite the uncertainty of the future. In Bethlehem, Ruth worked hard in the fields, gleaning leftovers from the harvest to support Naomi and herself. Her selfless love and dedication caught the eye of a wealthy landowner named Boaz. He admired Ruth's character and kindness, and in time, they got married. Ruth's life, which once seemed filled with hardship, was transformed by love. But the story doesn't end there. Ruth and Boaz had a son named Obed who became the father of Jesse, and Jesse was the father of David. Yes, that's right, King David, one of the greatest kings in the Bible. The selfless love of a humble woman named Ruth led to her being the great-grandmother of a great king. This wonderful story of Ruth and Naomi shows us the transformative power of love. It's a love that is loyal, that sticks around when times are tough. It's a love that works hard, that gives selflessly, and it's a love that can change destinies, turning a woman from Moab into the ancestor of a king. Love, as we see, has the power to change destinies. It can bring about miracles when we least expect them. Now let's journey through another biblical story that teaches us our first tip on how to increase love in our lives. Have you ever heard of the story of the Good Samaritan? It's a tale that talks about a man traveling from Jerusalem to Jericho who falls into the hands of robbers, left severely wounded. Along comes a priest, then a Levite, both of whom, despite their lofty positions, choose to ignore the injured man. But then, a Samaritan, considered an outsider and often despised, stops to help. He bandages the man's wounds, takes him to an inn, and even pays for his stay. This Samaritan, without a second thought, showed compassion to a complete stranger. He didn't see a foreigner or an enemy. He saw a human in need and acted on it. He demonstrated love in its purest form, compassion. Now, why is this story important? It teaches us that compassion isn't about who we show it to, but rather, it's about recognizing the needs of others and responding to them. It's about putting aside our differences, our biases, our prejudices, and choosing to love instead. Because at the end of the day, we're all human, with our own battles to fight, and the world could use a little more kindness, a little more compassion. So, in our quest to increase love in our lives, let's remember to show compassion, just like the Good Samaritan did. Remember, compassion is one of the greatest expressions of love. It's about seeing the needs of others and acting on it. Our next tip comes from a story that teaches us about the transformative power of forgiveness. Imagine Joseph, a man who had every reason to harbor resentment. His own brothers sold him into slavery, a fate that could have easily hardened his heart. But instead, Joseph chose a different path. He chose forgiveness. Remember when the tables turned, and Joseph found himself in a position of power over his brothers? He could have sought revenge, but he didn't. Instead, he forgave them. He released his bitterness, choosing love over hatred, compassion over revenge. Now you might be wondering, why would Joseph do that? Why would he forgive the people who had hurt him so deeply? The answer is simple. Forgiveness isn't about the person who wronged you. It's about you. When we forgive, we free ourselves from the shackles of resentment. We clear away the thorns of bitterness that can close off our hearts, making room for more love to bloom. We become like a garden, fertile and ready for new growth, rather than a barren field choked by weeds of past hurts. So, when we practice forgiveness, we're not just doing a favor for the person who wronged us. We're also doing ourselves a favor. We're opening our hearts and making room for more love, more joy, and more peace. Forgiveness isn't just about setting others free. It's about freeing ourselves from the chains of resentment and making room for more love. Our final tip is about serving others, a principle demonstrated in one of the most humbling stories in the Bible. In the book of John, there's a poignant moment when Jesus, despite being the master, kneels down to wash the dusty feet of his disciples. It's a scene that beautifully encapsulates service in its purest form. Here is Jesus, the one whom the disciples look up to, performing a task that was typically reserved for the lowest of servants. Now, why would he do that, you might ask? It was to illustrate a powerful message that no one is too great to serve others. Jesus was teaching his disciples that true greatness comes from humbling oneself and serving others. And he did this not just with words, but through his actions. Serving others isn't always about grand gestures. It can be as simple as holding the door open for someone, helping a friend with homework, or sharing your lunch with a classmate who forgot theirs. Every act of service, no matter how small, is an act of love. Just think about it. When you serve, you're putting someone else's needs before your own. You're saying, "I care about you. You matter to me." And that is love in action. But here's the interesting part. When you serve others, you're not just helping them. You're also helping yourself. You see, serving others can help you grow in love. It can soften your heart, teach you empathy, and make you more understanding. So, how can you serve others? Start by looking around you. Is there someone who needs a helping hand? Is there a task that you can help with? Remember, service isn't about getting something in return. It's about giving freely out of love. To serve is to love. When we choose to serve others, we're not just helping them, but we're also growing in love ourselves. Remember these tips, practice them daily, and watch as love overflows in your life.